When the film opens, we see Lee at the International Arrivals Terminal at Rome's Leonardo da Vinci Airport. And while the airport has grown considerably in the almost 40 years since The Way of the Dragon was filmed here, certain elements, such as this location, are still identifiable. Leonardo da Vinci Airport is Italy's largest airport and the first international air gateway of the country, with over 35 million passengers utilizing its services on a yearly basis. Located 22 miles from Rome's historic city center, the airport opened officially in January of 1961. In The Way of the Dragon, Lee's car is seen driving by a statue of Leonardo da Vinci, which is still located just outside the entrance to the airport. It is fitting that the airport is named after the great Italian polymath, as it was Da Vinci who designed the first proto-helicopter, and even a flying machine with wings, way back in the late 1400s. After the establishing shot of the airport, Lee's car goes on a virtual tour of the sights of Rome. Up first is the Piazza del Popolo, or Plaza of the People. The piazza lies inside the northern gate of the Aurelian walls, and prior to the advent of railroads, it was a traveler's first view of Rome upon his arrival. Part of its less glittering history is the fact that for centuries, the Piazza del Popolo was also a place for public executions, the last of which took place in 1826. Nevertheless, the piazza is magnificent in its bounty of statuary and fountains. For centuries, the piazza had a public cone-shaped fountain in its center, but in 1589, Pope Sixtus V replaced the fountain with the Egyptian Obelisk of Ramses II, which towers some 73 feet in height. The obelisk was built in 1300 BC and was taken from the Sun Temple in Heliopolis in 10 BC. It had originally been brought to Rome by the Emperor Augustus and had stood within the middle of the Circus Maximus to celebrate the conquest of Egypt. The scene in The Way of the Dragon was filmed on the Pincio Hill, which provides a magnificent view of what is generally considered to be the last papal contribution to Rome's legendary architecture. Lee's car is next seen passing by the Arch of Constantine, named after the emperor who made Christianity the official religion of Rome. It is situated between the Colosseum and the Palatine Hill, and was erected to commemorate Constantine's victory over Maxentius at the Battle of Milvian Bridge on October 38, 312. The large arch with 3 archways stands some 69 feet high and is almost 85 feet wide, and is the last of the existing triumphal arches of Rome. Continuing on, Lee's car next passes the National Monument of Victor Emmanuel II, the first king of a unified Italy. The monument was designed in 1895, inaugurated in 1911, and completed in 1935. Although the shot of it in The Way of the Dragon was brief and taken from within a moving car, one can still spot the pure white marble of its majestic stairways, Corinthian columns, and fountains. It stands over 230 feet high and takes up 443 feet in width. A huge equestrian sculpture of Victor Emmanuel catches the eye as one drives past. The monument holds the tomb of the unknown soldier, while the base of the structure houses the Museum of Italian Reunification. The next pass of Lee's car takes the viewer past the Piazza del Campidoglio, which was designed by Michelangelo. The Campidoglio, or Capitoline Hill, is the smallest of Rome's 7 hills, but it remains the religious and political center of the city ever since its foundation more than 2,500 years ago. The piazza was completed in the 17th century and faces west toward St. Peter's, the Christian equivalent of the capital. In the center of the plaza stands a statue of Marcus Aurelius. According to tradition, when Emperor Charles V visited Rome in 1536, Pope Paul III Farnese was embarrassed by the rundown state of the capital, and so asked Michelangelo to draw up a design for repaving the piazza and renovating its facades, which he did by adding classical sculptures chosen for their relevance to Roman history. Building started in 1546, but progressed so slowly that Michelangelo only lived to oversee the double flight of steps at the entrance. Lee's car then proceeds to pass by one of the most famous sights in all of Rome, the Trevi Fountain. At 85 feet high and 65 feet wide, the Trevi Fountain is the largest Baroque fountain in the city. Standing at its center is a statue of Neptune, flanked by horse-riding tritons that symbolize a stormy sea on the left and a calm sea on the right. Behind Neptune are the niche statues representing health and abundance. Although other fountains had occupied this space previously, the one seen in The Way of the Dragon was built between 1732 and 1762 for Pope Clement XII. Tradition has it that if one throws a coin into the fountain, one is ensured a return to Rome. Many people take this to heart, as it has been estimated that over 3,000 euros, the equivalent of roughly 4,400 US dollars, are thrown into this fountain every day. Lee's car next passes by the Jolly Hotel, which doubles as the villain's headquarters in the film. And then it finally comes to park in the street alongside the Hotel Flora on the famous Via Veneto. What appears to be the entrance to female lead Nora Mao's apartment is, in reality, the entrance to the hotel's laundromat. The Hotel Flora also happens to be the hotel that the cast and crew of The Way of the Dragon stayed while in Rome. The scene involving Lee and a prostitute, played by Italian actress Melissa Longo, was actually filmed within Bruce Lee's room at the Hotel Flora. Now a part of the distinguished Marriott chain of hotels, the hotel itself has been completely renovated and now boasts 156 rooms, each of which is filled with selected antiques and luxurious decor. It was a little less refined in Bruce Lee's day. Apart from such well-known landmarks, The Way of the Dragon also filmed on some of Rome's more famous streets, such as the Via Veneto. And additional exterior shots were filmed on streets near the Termini train station. The shots of Bruce Lee and Nora Mao walking the streets of Rome on the way to the bank were filmed at one intersection near the Termini train station and one of the locations, the Giuliani Cafe, is still going strong 37 years after filming stopped on The Way of the Dragon. Its storefront hasn't changed at all, but then 37 years is nothing to Giuliani's. It's been in business in Rome since 1897. Giuliani's is located right across the street from another location from The Way of the Dragon, the bank. And it was in the bank that Bruce Lee and Nora met Riccardo Billi, an Italian actor-producer who also served as the Rome location manager for Bruce Lee's company while in Italy. Billi is presently a film producer in Rome and looks back on his days working on The Way of the Dragon and with Bruce Lee with fondness.
Thinking, you know.
Yeah.
But in a private, when we stop, when we finish, we had make a lot of joke.
Yeah.
Yes. Funny, we make funny things together, things like that.
Oh yeah? Do you remember any of those funny things?
Well, I remember that one day, just to show me how to be defense or kick somebody, that he did something to me like here, and I fall down completely. Or he showed me that if somebody takes you here, it's enough that you push here, and he will take off the arms, because here it's so sensible that you cannot imagine.
Immediately following the bank scene is a scene involving Italian actress and model Melissa Longo,
You must learn to be more polite to people like that.
who, interestingly enough, ended up marrying Riccardo Billi after filming The Way of the Dragon.
And you have embarrassed me. The foreigners here are quite friendly.
Melissa's scene took place in the Piazza Navona, with the famous Four Rivers Fountain as its backdrop.
It represents the four rivers not the world that was new in that moment, four continents and four rivers. One is the Nile, one is the Ganges, the third is Rio de la Plata, the fourth is Danube. And it's one of the most beautiful Baroque marble sculpture. And there is another one in Rome, always made from Bernini's Trevi Fountain. It's really marvelous. And Bruce Lee show in his film, all that beauty, Italian beauty, marvelous.
The Four Rivers Fountain was designed by Gian Lorenzo Bernini in the mid-1600s. It was commissioned by Pope Innocent X and constructed of travertine and marble. Its base features a horse, a palm tree, and a lion, all of which are believed to have been carved by the master himself. The fountain is topped by a restored Egyptian obelisk. The four statues represent the four rivers of the then-known continents: the Danube, the Ganges, representing Asia, the Nile, the statue of which appears with his head covered, as the source of it was said to be unknown, the Rio de la Plata, which has a bag of coins on its ledge representing the riches of the Americas, and of course, the papal insignia is prominent, as not only did Pope Innocent X commission the fountain, but it proclaims the Church's influence on the four continents and asserts the triumph of the Church, the papacy, and the reigning papal family. The Four Rivers Fountain is actually only one of three in the Piazza Navona. On the south end of the piazza is the Fountain of the Moor, which takes its name from the statue of the Moor which Bernini added in the 17th century. While the north end of the piazza hosts the Fountain of the Coppersmiths, so named owing to the number of workshops in the area. Its sculptural decorations were completed in the 19th century. All of these fountains sit atop and follow the oval form of the Stadium of Domitian, which once occupied this site. The stadium had been commissioned in 80 AD by the Emperor Titus and is reported to have held 30,000 spectators. Water would be channeled from the Tiber River, allowing the floor of the stadium to fill with water for certain aquatic spectacles. It is still possible to see the pre-existing Roman structures in the foundation of some edifices at the northern end of the piazza. The next exterior to appear in the film is one of the most impressive, revealing a magnificent vista of Rome. This exterior shot was placed in the movie to indicate the dawning of a new morning after Lee had taken apart several thugs in an alley the night before. And what an impressive shot it is, taking in the monument to Vittorio Emanuele, the church of San Giovanni del Florentine, and the Castle Sant'Angelo. Castle Sant'Angelo was originally commissioned by the Emperor Hadrian as a mausoleum for himself and his family in approximately 138 AD. It was later converted for use as a fortress and castle, and is presently a museum. Of course, it doesn't take long for the action to start in The Way of the Dragon. As with all the fight scenes in The Way of the Dragon, it was not shot in Rome, but on a soundstage in Golden Harvest Studios in Hong Kong. Anders Nelson, a Hong Kong native of Swedish descent, has the distinction of appearing in this scene with Lee. Nelson, a musician by profession, remembers with fondness his role in the film and the experience of working with Bruce Lee.
Well, there was actually a bunch of us, and he did tell us that we were Italian thugs in a back alley, and then he picked me for some reason to be the guy to attack him. He did say I should be extremely accurate and very careful in not being, even half an inch more forward, because the nunchakus were for real.
Oh, they were the real nunchucks?
Oh, they were the real thing.
The polyethylene ones.
They whistled, as they went by. I actually misjudged, and I got hit right here. One of the reasons I grew a mustache in the beginning was because I had a slight scar here. I wasn't badly hurt, and my sort of favorite little anecdote from that time is he kept coming up to me and shaking my hand, and his handshake was so powerful that actually hurt more than being hit by the nunchak.
After dispatching the thugs, Lee's sightseeing tour of Rome continues, and up next is a stop by the Campidoglio for an expansive view of the Roman Forum. The walkway that Lee and Nora Mao walked down is actually on the other side of the Piazza del Campidoglio. Located in a valley between the Palatine Hill and the Capitoline Hill, the Roman Forum was originally a marsh, but the Romans drained the area and converted it into their center of social and political activity. It was then expanded to include temples, law courts, and the Senate House. When the empire fell, the Forum was forgotten and became buried over the centuries. Only a few columns and stone blocks remain from some of the temples. What remains offers only tantalizing glimpses of what once was. Visible from Lee's vantage point are the Arch of Septimius Severus, still displaying the reliefs of Severus's victories in Iraq and Iran during the 3rd century. Also visible are the 8 columns that remain of the Temple of Saturn, which was erected by the consul Titus Larsius in 17 BC. The other temple remnants visible from Lee's lookout are those of the Temple of Vespasian and Titus, which were built in 94 AD. The pair then move on from Roman times to the Renaissance era by traveling 54.6 miles east of Rome to the town of Tivoli, where they pause to visit the magnificent Villa d'Este. The Villa d'Este is renowned for its lush garden, statues, and magnificent fountains. It dates back to 150 AD, when the villa was gifted to Cardinal Ippolito II d'Este, who was the son of Alfonso I d'Este and Lucretia Borgia. Oh yes, and the cardinal was also the grandson of Pope Alexander VI. Since the end of World War I, the villa has belonged to the Italian state, and extensive preservation and restoration efforts have been made over the years to ensure the integrity of its artifacts. The garden is arranged in a combination of terraces and slopes, and a large central stairway leading down a wooded slope to 3 rectangular fish ponds that are set on the cross-axis at the lowest point of the garden. The fountains, which are omnipresent, are a wonder of hydraulic engineering, making use of ancient Roman hydraulics as well as a Roman tunnel that diverts water from the Anian River to provide water to the sequence of the fountains. In The Way of the Dragon, 4 fountains are shown. When Lee's character walks down the stairs and turns right, he observes the Fontana dell'Ovato, or Oval Fountain. It is also known as the Tivoli Fountain, where visitors can walk behind the water on the sides by means of an arcade. Above the basin are 3 statues, each symbolizing one of the 3 rivers of Tivoli, and above it all, a statue of Pegasus. Lee's character is next seen walking the Avenue of the 100 Fountains. The fountain jets have the shape of lilies, eagles, lions, obelisks, and small boats, each of which is a miniature fountain unto itself. The presence of the eagle is related to the original coat of arms of the Este family. The 100 fountains are engineered on 3 levels, in which the waters of Tivoli's 3 rivers are said to slide symbolically. At the center point of the avenue, the vegetation yields to a magnificent balcony with a central view of the gardens. The fountain that really opens the eyes of Lee's character in the film is the Neptune Fountain. This is the only fountain in the Villa d'Este to be realized during the 20th century. Its spray shoots up some 20 feet. It is these flumes that spray Lee's character as he walks by on the upper level. And at the upper level is one of the Villa d'Este's most prized displays, the water organ fountain. This highly pedimented fountain was the wonder of its era, as it's a water and air-powered musical fountain which dates back to the 1st century Alexandria. Quite apart from its hydraulic rhapsodies are its statues of Apollo, Diana, and of course, the Este's heraldic eagle stands above it all. But the highlight of Bruce Lee's film locations in Rome has to be where he fought his climactic battle in the film. And that took place here, in the truly legendary Roman Colosseum. Over 5,000 people a day pass through the same entranceway that Bruce Lee walked when he entered the Colosseum. When it was completed in 80 AD, over 1900 years ago, it was called the Flavian Amphitheater to commemorate the Flavian victory over Judea. It was commissioned by the Emperor Vespasian of the Flavian family, but it was inaugurated by his son Titus. It took 10 years of ingenious Roman engineering and slave muscle to complete its construction. Its height of 157 feet makes it the equivalent in size of a 15-story building. Elliptical in design, it is 620 feet long by 513 feet wide, with 80 entrances and a retractable canvas roof that could be drawn across the top of the Colosseum to shield spectators from the sun or the rain. The Colosseum held up to 50,000 spectators, each with a numbered ticket, who entered through 76 of the entrances on the ground level. 2 more entrances were reserved for the Emperor Titus, and 2 more were reserved for the gladiators. Upon entering the Colosseum, the spectators climbed sloping ramps up to their seats. A wooden flooring was used to cover the subterranean chambers where the gladiators and animals were kept prior to their performance. During the first 10 years of its existence, the stadium would often be filled with water and used for mock naval battles. Most shows in the Colosseum lasted all day, beginning with comedic contests and exotic animal shows in the morning, and moving on to professional gladiator events in the afternoon. In most tournaments and games, death played a prominent role. Professional gladiators, primarily condemned criminals, prisoners of war, and slaves, fought either animals or each other, generally until death. During the Colosseum's opening ceremonies in 80 AD, such spectacles were held for 100 days straight, during which time hundreds of animals and over 2,000 gladiators were killed. Lee's filming in the Colosseum was achieved without permits, resulting in a lot of handheld camera work. Most of the footage was shot on the first and second levels of the Colosseum, but they also made use of the third level, which is presently closed to the public. An ardent student of history, Lee wanted to trade on Rome's warrior past, and envisioned the Colosseum as the perfect backdrop to a martial art battle between two modern-day gladiators in the form of his character and that played by American martial arts champion Chuck Norris. The fight scene, which Lee painstakingly choreographed and that took both men 5 days to film, stands, like the Colosseum itself, as a classic of its genre. The last locale used in Rome was filmed at the Campo di Verano Cemetery, a huge graveyard the size of a small city. Indeed, it's so big it has its own bus line. It was founded in the early 19th century and hosts several works by major Roman and Italian architects and sculptors, as well as large and ornate tombstones and family mausoleums. It was on this street within Campo di Verano Cemetery that the famous closing to the film was lensed, featuring Lee's character, Tong Long, walking off to his next and greatest adventure. And what an adventure it would prove to be, his last and most iconic film, Enter the Dragon.